So I ended up becoming passionate about Japanese cuisine in several different sort of angles and scenarios. I worked at Morimoto for 3 years, so that certainly had something to do with it. A little later in my life, but it really gave me an understanding of the basics to the cuisine. I opened every day, so I made the dashi every morning, I made the stocks, I made the rice every day, so I really sort of got a deep understanding of it, regardless of whether people think Morimoto is Japanese or Japanese American or whatever. I really got an understanding for what I think the roots of that cuisine is. But it sort of goes a little deeper than that. I sort of, my first book report at culinary school, I went to Johnson & Wales, was on sushi, and I sort of somehow randomly picked it, but I was always sort of interested in it. But I think subliminally, there was a point, I was in 4th grade and I got Olympic Day, whatever, elementary school is Olympic Day, and we got Japan. And I built a fishing boat with my grandfather in his garage, and learned how to sew with my grandmother, and we sewed the Japanese flag for the little fishing boat float and whatever. So I don't think that caused it, but I certainly think it imprinted some sort of seed in regards to my interest in Japan and its food. And it was also a bonding moment for me. My parents were divorced when I was very little, so this was sort of a father-son sort of relationship, even though it was my grandfather. So I think it had it made a pretty big impression on my interest in that sort of culture. I've come to World of Flavors for several reasons. The big one is to sort of help spread my message, which is that Italian and Japanese cuisine are really very, very similar, and I think very few people sort of recognize that. They really look at food in a lot of the same ways. They take high quality ingredients and do very little to them in terms of manipulation. The Japanese focus a little more on the aesthetics than the Italians do per se, but they really take very, very quality, pure ingredients and do very, very little to them. And if you really start researching it, there's a lot more connections than just that. Mountainous regions, watering regions, preservation methods are very similar, fermentations are very similar. There's really a lot of things about these two cuisines that really are symbiotic in my opinion, and I'm really trying hard to sort of relay that message to people. These two cuisines sort of are the epitome of my philosophy since I've grasped the both of them, which is simplicity. So I like manipulation, but I like manipulation with my knives in my hands, not necessarily with hydrocolloids or chemicals, or that's not really my thing. Knife cuts I'm very passionate about, knives I'm very passionate about. So I take this sort of simplicity of what Italian is, maybe make it a little bit more intricate through knife work, which I think helps blend. There's another way where I'm blending these two sort of styles and cultures together. I think my food is interesting to American chefs because they're all familiar with Italian cuisine. Everyone in America is familiar at least with your tomato sauces and your spaghettis and that sort of thing. What they're not necessarily familiar with is some of the Japanese ingredients. And in my opinion, the Italian sort of lens is a way to sort of focus on ingredients that other people are not necessarily familiar with in a comfortable way. My new restaurant is called Uma Temakeria, and it's based on the temaki, which is the Japanese hand roll. So it's the cone-shaped sushi. And the thought process there is several different. The big one is accessibility and solving a problem to me. I think that there's very few options for high quality sushi at a reasonable price point. You either have this bad sushi, that overcooked rice that's unseasoned and frozen fish and whatever, or you have this experience that's $100, $200 or whatever it is. There's nothing really in the middle, and so I think that this is what we're accomplishing is solving the problem of offering accessibility to people. It's also offering a healthful alternative to your fast food product. So, Chipotle's doing a decent job with it, but that burrito's 1,700 calories. I mean, I don't know that for a fact, but I'm sure it's not low calorie, okay? So I really think we're solving a problem, which is the second point of it. So we're offering accessibility, number one, we're offering quality ingredients at a reasonable price point, number two, and we're solving a problem that I think a lot of people have, and that's the ability to eat healthy on the go in a quick service environment. What my goal or my takeaway from this would be is to sort of continue to build the brand and spread my brand and spread what I think information is in regards to it. And that's not necessarily takeaway, but it's my goal per se in regards to what we're doing here this weekend, is to really sort of expand people's knowledge and understanding of what Japanese and Italian food can be and hopefully will be in the future. One of the dishes I'm preparing this week is black truffle risotto with sake kasu, which is the sake lees. So it's the raft from the sake making process. What I think is really interesting about it, and as far as I know, I haven't seen anybody do this, it's maybe or may not be, but rice is very important to both cultures, which we're tying back into some of the other things we discussed. They both use short grain rice, which is another common denominator in the two cultures. That being said, I think that the yeastiness of the sake leaves and the earthy, funky mushroomness of the truffles really works wonderfully together. So it's really a great example of bringing these two cultures together in a symbiotic and natural way. My advice for culinary students is take your time and really understand the basics before you start trying to experiment with things. I think it's really important that a cook knows how to roast a chicken properly or knows how to peel an onion properly. And there is a right way and a wrong way to peel an onion. You know, I had someone once talking to me as an intern, right, about how he could butter poach a lobster, right? And I handed him a bag, some onions and prep, and he sort of gave me this look like, really, I gotta peel a whole bag of onions? And he left all of that like fibrous sinew on the outside. So he pulled the first layer off, so they were white, kind of, but he left all of this like stringy fibrousness on the outside of it. You can't eat that, it's awful. So to me, like, you claim to know how to butter poach a lobster, but you can't peel an onion. And that to me is the biggest thing about it. Like, really take your time and understand it. And I'm not old, but I'm certainly not young. And I started very, very young. I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm in my mid-30s. And it's something that I really think is A, I'm doing reasonably well for being in my mid-30s. And B, I took my time and really understood it. So I think that's really important. People lose sight of what it takes to really do this as a professional.